What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mile High Hockey. Drew Spivak, Will Peterson with you today as NHL free agency is about 24 hours old. Drew, we are live right here in studio in this moment. It is 10:15 on Wednesday morning, and the Avalanche have not done a lot yet. That doesn't mean a lot still can't to come. They got about $7.5 million in cap space, but as we sit here at this moment, as our basketball team goes a little berserk, our hockey team taking a little more measured approach again at this very moment.
Do you like that approach? Do you feel good about that approach? Because I know there's a section of Avalanche fans out there that are like, man, they didn't do anything on free agency day one. What are they doing? Why are they sitting on their hands? I think if you sit back and take a look at it, this is a good thing. Like, I know for us, like being in the content business, it's kind of like, man, you wish they would go crazy and do a bunch of different things to improve this team. But if you look at some of the contracts that were handed out on day one free agency, and it's like this every year, but Mikael Granlund getting $7 million to go play center for the Ducks. I mean, some of this money is just crazy money. And when I look at the free agents that were available, it wasn't a sexy list. Honestly, there really wasn't, a lot of things I guess that the Avalanche needed. That you look at it like, that's the guy. That's what I'm trying. There was literally one name for me where I looked at that list and said, all right, we look at where the Avalanche need. They need defensive help. That's probably their biggest need going, the rest of the way. I wanted Vladislav Gavrikov. He ended up signing a $7 million deal with the New York Rangers. So that was the only one where I looked and said, that'd have been nice to have, but I'm glad that they didn't spend the money on. We saw, a couple guys leave, got good deals elsewhere, but I just look at this thing overall and say, you know what? I'm glad that Chris McFarland sat on his hands and didn't go crazy and do anything big, sexy, or splashy on day one of free agency.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned like the top free agent lists, and Jonathan Drouin, I saw a list where he was like the 7th or 8th best free agent in the NHL, and the Avalanche didn't want him. I mean, let's be honest. When Drouin's agent over the weekend tweets out, my client is hitting free agency, that was code for the Avalanche are not going to offer him a deal. He goes to the New York Islanders. We certainly wish him the best, but this is a guy that got demoted to the third line during the playoffs. You look at some of his ice time, he was playing less than 11 minutes a game. Clearly, Gabe Landeskog is in their top 6 plans, and rightfully so. Landeskog certainly earn that right. But yeah, that's what's happened so far is Drouin leaves for the Islanders. Ryan Lindgren leaves for the Kraken. He got $4.5 million a year. I don't think I would have been comfortable with that. I don't think I saw enough from Lindgren. The only thing the Avs has done is re-sign Parker Kelly. And then, oh, by the way, of course, they traded Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood. So I think my question to you would be, a lot coming out, not a lot coming in. I mean, Coyle, Wood, Drouin, Lindgren, all gone. I know we always talk about depth, but they are going to have to use this $7.5 million to patch a few holes here and there.
Yeah, and I'll start with with like Drouin and Lindgren. You look at the deals those guys got. Drouin got $4 million a year. Lindgren, like you said, got $4.5 million a year. I'm fine with the Avs not going there because let's be honest, especially with Drouin, where was the fit? Because you mentioned he got demoted in the playoffs to the third line. Jonathan Drouin's not a third line player.
No.
And with the way the Avs top 6 is set up right now, there was no fit on that roster for Jonathan Drouin. So good for him going and getting money to playoffs where he's going to get more of a full-time role with the Islanders. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year, something he didn't have the luck with so much last year as opposed to year one with the Avalanche. So good for him on that. Ryan Lindgren, I didn't see enough from him that really impressed me to where I'd say, yeah, I want the Avs to go spend $4.5 million on a probably third pairing defenseman. I'm fine with him leaving. I'm good with that. Then you talk about Charlie Coyle and Miles Wood. I loved what they did with those two deals. I think a lot of people around the NHL looked at it and said, what the heck is Columbus doing? You're going and spending, getting a guy in Charlie Coyle's making what, $5.5 million. Miles Wood's making $2.5 million. Those guys were expendable for this Avalanche roster. It was fine at the trade deadline, I think, to look at Charlie Coyle and say, all right, I'm willing to spend $5.5 million on a third line center for a cup run, for 2 months, 3 months, whatever the case was going to be. But to have that go into your regular season and be spending that kind of money on a third line center, to me seems a little bit crazy. And I'm glad that Chris McFarland was able to move off that contract and open up some salary space to make some moves this offseason. Yeah, we know they're not doing anything in the free agent market. That's okay. You can do things via trade. That's what they're more likely to do anyway, because like I saw that they haven't spent more than $4 million on a free agent, on an annual basis since 2018. They just don't do that wisely so. They'll explore the trade market, go that route, and bring guys in like that. I have full confidence that Chris McFarland's going to spend that $7.5 million wisely and fill out the bottom six and fill out that third pairing on the defensive side.
Yeah, and just because it's been 24 hours doesn't mean they're not going to spend the money. You know, I know in NHL it usually goes boom, boom, boom. And heck, again, we're here on a Wednesday morning. It may be settled by Wednesday night in terms of how they're spending that $7.5 million. All right, this Ehlers guy from the Jets, he's the big name that's still out there, expected to make a decision today, it sounds like. I'm obviously familiar with his game because he's played Colorado a lot over the years, but where do you check in on, is this a realistic possibility for the Avs, and is he the best free agent still on the market?
I'll be honest, I was surprised to see his name out there, at least connected with the Avalanche. I think Carolina was the one I think we all assumed that he was going to go to, but to see the Avs connected to that, it was like, okay, why? Why is he connected with the Avalanche? Because we just talked about it. Their top six is already filled. You got Nichushkin, you got Lehkonen, you got McKinnon, you got Landeskog, Nichushkin, and Brock Nelson. So where does he fit on that? To me, this whole Ehlers conversation kind of says to me that things are not going well with Martin Necas as far as contract talks go. My assumption, and this is a big assumption, is that he's probably going to want more than what the Avalanche are willing to pay. So you could look at it and say, all right, well, we could give Nikolai Ehlers, $8 million a year for the next 4 or 5 years, or we could give Martin Necas 9, 10, maybe even up to $11 million a year. And you got to ask yourself, is that worth it? Because to me, they're similar type players. They put up, Necas put up a little bit more production, but what their skill sets are and what they do, they're pretty similar type players. So part of me is like, well, do you want to just take on Ehlers and hope that he gets the Nathan McKinnon bump playing on a line with him like most guys do? I mean, we saw with Necas last year. He came in and had, 28 points, I think, and however many games he played with Colorado since January. You could kind of assume that he could come in and get that bump. But to me, this just speaks to things aren't necessarily going well with Necas. And we've heard his name in rumors. Like, you're kind of like, wait, the Avs could be looking to move on from Martin Necas? Well, why? To me, it also comes down to contract. And I don't know how comfortable I am giving Martin Necas more than, $9.5 million a year. And I kind of feel like the Avs might be in that same boat.
Yeah. And especially if you trade Necas to sign Ehlers and then get an asset back for Necas, because we saw it with Mikko Rantanen, and we're not going to rehash Mikko. We've done plenty of Mikko, but the reason they traded Mikko was because they didn't want to risk losing him for nothing.
Right.
So if that was your philosophy on Rantanen, then it may have to be your philosophy on Necas. Now, yes, of course, you could go into the season with him and then trade him at the deadline if things aren't going well, similar to what they did with Mikko Rantanen. But I think they'd rather just feel settled with a guy like Ehlers and then move Necas, preferably for an asset or two on the blue line, and then you can start to see how this roster is going to get constructed. Because again, we talked about it. They lost 4 guys. Again, they didn't lose 4 superstars, but they lost 4 legitimate NHL players. I mean, Miles Wood sort of teetering on whether he's legitimate NHL player at this point in his career or not, but they do have holes to fill. If you sign Ehlers and then turn Necas into 2 assets, you can start to see, okay, an opening night lineup is starting to take form in your head a little bit here.
Well, because what do you need to fill on this roster? The top 6 is good. You feel like you got to fill the 2 wings on the third line, and then that way you move Jack Drury and Parker Kelly, who they re-signed or they extended, down to the 4th line. So you got 2 holes to fill on that third line. You probably need a left shot defenseman in your third pairing to go along with Sam Malinski. I'm fine with the Sam Malinski, kind of pay bump that he got. What was it, like a 1-year extension or something like that?
Yeah, I think 1.4.
Yeah, I'm fine. Go prove it. Let's see what this kid can do. I like Sam Malinski. I think he's a good player. Go get him a better partner than Keaton Middleton. I think you're going to be in really good shape. So yeah, this all kind of speaks to me as like, all right, if you sign Ehlers, Necas is gone. Well, what can you get back in return for Martin Necas? Could I interest you in a Bo Byram?
Oh, that'd be a full circle moment.
I mean, why not at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, Buffalo, it appears, is kind of interested in moving on from him. He's a restricted free agent. I'm not sure they want to pay him. I'm not sure what the Avalanche would want to pay him, because I don't even know what Bo Byram is worth at this point in his career. I think last year was the first time he played a full 82-game season so far in his career. Now, the kid's only 24 years old. We've seen that there's flashes there from him, but maybe, okay, if the Avs do sign Nikolai Ehlers, you call up Buffalo and say, all right, what would you want for Bo Byram? Would you be interested in throwing Alex Tuck into that deal as well, who I think is on the last year of his deal? You could put him as your third line, right wing. And in that case, guess what? Your lineup's looking pretty darn good at that point. But to me, the question would be like, all right, if they do make a move like that, what are you willing to pay Bo Byram? I'm not sure I'm willing to go more than maybe $4 million a year. And I think that's probably going to be too low because I think Byram's going to want way more than that. But there's options out there. There's guys out there that the Avs could go swing and go get to improve this roster. And keep in mind, they don't have to do it all, by the time the season starts. You could kind of mix and match. You could bring Kiwi Ranta back as your third line left wing, be totally fine with that on a veteran minimum deal type thing. You can improve things. You can go get a third pairing defenseman at the trade deadline if you need to, kind of like they did this last year. So if they don't do anything, by the end of July or August, whatnot, just keep in mind that this thing could just kind of shuffle around, and there's options that you have to improve the roster down the line.
Well, and what's crazy? Okay, we got to unpack this. So you traded Bowen Byram for Casey Middlestad.
Yeah.
You traded Casey Middlestad for Charlie Coyle.
Mm-hmm.
You dumped Charlie Coyle in a salary dump to create cap space to maybe bring back Bowen Byram. I mean, Drew, you talk about a full circle moment and sort of all these shuffling of these different pieces. I wouldn't hate it. It'd be a weird route to end up at that point, but I think fans would be open to a reunion with Byram again at the right price. I'm with you, but it is just funny, man. You don't really see this in any other sports.
No.
How often these guys are moved as different pieces, and then someone's got to make like one of those maps, where it connects all of it of how it ultimately worked out. And I'm with you. You would still like the team on paper, especially if you could get a second asset from Buffalo. If it was signing Nikolai Ehlers, trading Marty Necas for Bo Byram, and someone else from the Sabres who notoriously make bad deals. It could all work out. It would just kind of work out in a funny way.
And that's one of the things I love about Chris McFarland, that, he's willing to admit his mistakes and say, man, maybe that we didn't do this right. Let's go and just try to improve the roster. He never just sits there and says, you know what? Let's just throw it to the wall and see what happens. He's
not Calvin Booth. He's stuck in his way,
dude.
Stubborn to a fault.
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
He's the complete total opposite of Calvin Booth. So is it likely that Bo Byram ends up back here in Denver? No, probably not. But it's fun to kind of sit here and talk about. And there's another name I'll give you too that could end up back in Denver is a bottom six kind of guy, Nikolai Kovalenko, who they traded in the Alexander Georgiev deal. He didn't get a qualifying offer from San Jose. Would you be interested in bringing him back and putting him in that bottom six? I would think about it because I liked what I saw from him in that small sample size.
And then that trade would just be Georgiev for Blackwood, which would be a total coup.
That's a steal.
That's a total
steal. So I like it. I'm excited to see what McFarland does. We know he's going to swing. I still think he's going to swing big, and you're going to see some sort of a big move. I don't know what that move is yet. I don't know some of the guys that are out there now, trade-wise that you could bring in, but I feel like McFarland's going to make some sort of a big swing. And no, unfortunately, it's probably not going to be Sidney Crosby, as much as we all would love that to happen. I do think Sid eventually plays here. It's just not going to be this year.
Yeah, we saw Nathan McKinnon comment fake news on Instagram while they were all at some sort of bachelor party together. We know Nathan and Sid are good friends. All right, so not a lot of updates, but a lot of interesting tea leaves to read. And Drew and I will do this again at some point next week as the offseason comes more into focus. Happy 4th of July, everyone. Shout out to our producer, Matt. He is moving on to bigger and better things. We appreciate all his help on Mile High Hockey. And again, we'll see you next week with hopefully some more Avalanche news to chat about.